Hi, and welcome to Scuba Diving Earth, and my name is Russell Bowyer. And today I'm going to be talking about how to reduce your gas consumption. I call it gas consumption because it's not just about air, because dive tanks can either contain atmospheric air that we're breathing now, nitrox, which is basic nitrox is a concentrated oxygen mix, and then trimix. And trimix is mixing different gases, but that's not really for beginner divers, which is what this this video is all about. Trimix is further down the track when you become an advanced diver, but it's about gas consumption regardless of what gas you're breathing effectively. And nobody wants to be the first one on a dive to run out of air or gas, I should say, because A, that spoils your dive because it's too short, because you want to be able to dive for as long as possible, and B, you're going to the surface and looking at everyone carrying on the dive, and you can bet your bottom dollar what'll happen is you'll go back to the boat, you'll get on the boat, they carry on the dive, and they come up and say, we saw a fantastic manta ray, or we saw a hammerhead, or we saw a whale shark, or whatever it is, and you weren't down there to see it because you ran out of air too soon. So it's important that you increase that air consumption time, improve your air consumption, so you actually increase the time of the dive, so you spend more time underwater. And you can't help but notice, but I've got a diving cylinder here, and essentially, unless we add more to it, you can do a twin set. You can have ponies and so on, or get a bigger tank. This one's a 12 litre, you can get 15 litre tanks. Unless you add more air, as in more bottles or what have you, we've all got the same amount of air, and that will only last a finite amount of time. We'd have to worry about it while we're breathing out here. But when you're underwater, this will only last a certain amount of time, and you want that to go as far as possible. So in the series, there's 3 of these videos. This is the first of 3, and this one I'm going to be talking about kit. The next one is things that you can do about yourself to improve your air consumption, and then the third is actions you can take which will improve it. And what I'll do is towards the end of this video I'm going to be putting up a link to it might be there, can't remember, whichever side, I think it might be that side actually. So a link will come up and it will take you to the next one in the series. So whichever one you find you come in at, you might come in at number 2, that would be about you, or you could come in on the actions and come back around to this one as well, because I think it's important you listen to all 3 of these and pick up all those crucial tips. Just as an aside, why this is so important to me actually is, you may not notice it while I'm sitting down, but I'm actually a very big guy. I'm 6'6". I'm probably around about 250 pounds. Now if you look at the average person, and I can't remember the stats, but I just remember this percentage, I'm 27% bigger than the average person. Now, on most dive boats, wherever I'm diving in the world, I get the same tank as the average person. So I'm still diving with a 12 litre cylinder, but I'm 27% bigger, so I've got to be that more efficient. So I've got to find as many ways as possible to extend my air. Now, if it works for me, assuming you're not necessarily as big as me, but if you are, then even better. But if you're not as big as me, if it works for me as the size I am, it will definitely work for you as well, and you'll probably be able to outlast me underwater because you are going to be breathing less air. And as it works out in the percentages, for me to breathe the same as the average person, this tank needs to be a 15 litre, because the difference between 12 and 15 is actually 27% bigger. But anyway, that's an aside. So that's why it's important to me, which is why I want to get it across to be important to you as well, and hopefully that makes sense. So anyway, so this is about the kit, or improving your kit to make sure you make your air or your gas last longer. So the first one is about staying warm, having the correct exposure suit. Now, to my left here, sorry, to my right here, or your left, I've got 3 essential types of suit. So the very first one is a wetsuit. Now wetsuits come from around about 2 or 3 mil, and they go up to probably about 5 or 7 mil. And you need to get the right thickness for the right temperature of water. Now in a wetsuit you can't go too cold, but as the water gets colder for say a 2 or 3 mil wetsuit, you might want to increase that to say 5 mil, probably up to about 7 mil. But when you're getting to the 7mm ranges, you're probably going to be going to the next suit, which is a semi-dry suit. But the important thing about a wetsuit is not just its thickness, it's how it fits. It should fit like a glove. So it should fit nice and snugly to your body, and the wrist cuff shouldn't be flapping around. Like, I mean, like this shirt, you can see up there easily. You shouldn't be able to do that, because the concept behind a wetsuit is you do get wet, and you get a layer of water, your body warms that up, and that's what keeps you warm. And the problem with a baggy wetsuit is that what happens is more water gets into it, flushes through, and that's what makes you cold, because of course as water flushes over your body, it takes the heat away, and water is about 25 times more efficient at consuming or taking heat away from you, 25% better than you are in air. So that's why if you, I mean, room temperature is about 21 degrees, which feels fine, but you jump into 21-degree water and it feels cold, and that's because the water is sucking all the heat away. So that's the first suit, is a wetsuit. I've already mentioned it, a semi-dry. Now semi-dries are a little bit thicker. You still get wet, so don't be fooled by the name semi-dry. It's semi-dry. A little bit thicker, and you've got cuffs that have got like sort of a material that helps to seal around your wrists a little bit tighter. And normally, which this one is, you have two sections of it. So you've got like a leggings part that you put on, and then this jacket part you put over it. So around your core, you've actually got double thickness, and that's where you lose most body heat, is around your core. So, and the fact, the way a semi-dry works is it lets even more it restricts the flow of water even more, so you have less water running through your body, and it keeps you just that little bit warmer. Now, I dived for years with this particular semi-dry in UK waters, and I even dived in waters with ice on the top of it, which is fine. However, there is a however. If you're doing 2 dives in a day, particularly say you're on a dive boat and you don't come in, I used to dive quite a lot in the Farne Islands. It was great for diving with seals. Okay, for the first dive, I was just as warm as anyone in a dry suit, which is the next suit I'm going to come on to. But in the dive interval, and it can get very cold, we were sort of diving in late September, early October, and sometimes we were having snow and high winds. I got absolutely freezing, and then the thought of getting back into cold water in a wet, manky suit was not nice, and I struggled to stay warm on the second dive. And that's why I'd recommend you consider, if you're going to be diving in cold water, to stay warm. Excuse the loud sound there. Is a dry suit. And a dry suit does exactly that. It keeps you dry underwater, and that by the way it works, it keeps you stay warmer, because you're no longer having the water take that heat away from you. They're more expensive for sure, but they certainly work better. And coming on to that 2 dives, the second dive, you'll be toasty warm, and it's not actually a problem. In addition to the 3 types of suit, you can always add a hood to keep your head warm, because you do lose a lot of heat out of your head, and gloves to keep your hands warm. So those are the things to do. And the important thing is that the more heat you lose, the more air you'll breathe, because your respiration, your body will be using up energy to keep you warm, which is, I think, is something around about 70 or 80% of your energy is used to keep you warm as a mammal. And the colder you get, the more energy, and the more energy you use, the more air you'll need, or oxygen you'll need. So the more you'll have to breathe that gas, and the quicker you'll run out of that gas. So be warm, don't be cold. So sorry that went on quite a long time, but that's probably one of the most important aspects of diving, is staying warm. So the second one is propulsion and fins, and it's important to get the right fins. These ones I've had these quite a long time actually. You can probably tell by the scratches on them. That's not from scratching on coral, but that's going in wrecks and landing on rough bottoms and stuff like that. Rough sandy and stony bottoms, as it happens. But you need this to be fairly rigid. and sometimes the longer the better, and certain designs, because the harder the better the fins when you're finning through the water, the less energy you've got to put in it. But it's not into swimming along, but it's not just about the fins, it's about how you fin with those. So you don't want to be doing like a cycling action like this. You want to be using your leg. So if you imagine this is your whole leg, you want to be using the whole leg like that. You might have to sort of bend it at the knee a little bit, like I'm doing with the elbow, and fin up and down like that. And it's all about taking it slowly. So choose the right fins. Number 3. Sorry, I think they're going to stay there now. Is having the right weight, having the correct weight. If you have the incorrect weight, what happens is not only are you going to have to put more air in your BCD to compensate for that excessive weight, but also if you're too heavy in the water, when you're finning through the water, you have to sort of push all this extra weight through the water, and water is much more dense than air. And if you can imagine trying to force your way through it, if you ever try to run in water up to probably if I said up to your knees, that would be pretty hard to do, and that's because water is so dense it's very difficult to get through it. The best way to trim yourself in terms of weight to get the right buoyancy is towards the end of the dive. So you do your whole dive, tell the instructor this is what you want to do at the end of it, come up with about 60 bar, which I think is about 870 psi. So it's not, so you come to your safety stop point about sort of five-ish meters, with a bit more than you need to come out, which is 50 bar, I think that's 725 psi. And the reason I say that is at that point your cylinder is lighter, because believe it or not, when a dive tank is full of air, it's actually heavier. You might seem a bit strange because it's just air, but no, it is. This is a lot heavier. So at the end of the dive, this is lighter, so that's the lightest. At sort of 5 meters, whatever exposure suit on, say it's a wetsuit, that will be its most buoyant because it will be thickest. It won't have been squeezed when you're deep down. So what you want to try and do is to get yourself neutrally buoyant with as little, if not no air in your BCD. So if you start dumping air, if you've still got some air in it, and you start to descend, hand weights to your buddy or your diving instructor if he's the one that's there, and then if you start coming up a little bit, dump some more air. And the idea being to do that exercise until you're at a point where you've got no air left in your BCD and you're just neutrally buoyant, you're just staying at the 5 meters or whatever it is. I mean, ideally, if you come up a little bit more, if you can do it at 3 meters, even better. So if you stay neutrally buoyant with the amount of weight you've got left on, no air in your BCD, that's perfect buoyancy. And when you go on your next dive, you'll be using less air for sure. The fourth one here is going down with only necessary kit. Now, admittedly, I like to take a couple of extra things. I always take a dive torch. I always take a delayed SMB. That's for another video, but delayed SMB is, I have one here. That's a delayed SMB. And I always go down with a diver's pad. Now you might say they're extra bits of kit, and they make you heavier. But be careful, maybe don't have to go down with everything, particularly when you're first learning to dive, or you're a newbie and you're trying to improve your air consumption. So the least amount of kit you can have on you, you're less heavy and you're not able to force your way through the water again. So it's no different to having your weight. But if there's a piece of kit that you really want to take, make sure that's with you when you go back to the previous step, when you're trying to get yourself neutrally buoyant, because when that kit is on you, that'll be part of your becoming neutrally buoyant. So just be mindful of what you're taking down. The more you take down, the heavier you are and the more air you will consume. The last thing, number 5, is trim. Now, trim it's a combination of a lot of the previous 4 things actually. So it's about maybe having the weight in the wrong place, or perhaps not having the right BCD, and so on. And so the first thing about trim is what you want to be ideally doing is swimming through the water completely horizontally. I should do it the other way around, so I do my little fins. Swimming horizontally. What you don't want to be doing is swimming through the water like that, because if your body is in a sort of a, say, 45-degree angle, you've got more resistance. So as you're going through the water, you've got more resistance pushing against you. Whereas if you're like that, you're going to be cutting through the water. There's not many fish. One that springs to mind is a shark. There's not many sharks you see swimming like that. They all swim like that. They're torpedo shaped and they cut through the water. And that's what you want to try and achieve. And what could cause that? Weight belt. So if the weight belt is too low, that will weigh this part down. So you need to balance out your weight. BCD. Sometimes people don't like the jacket style BCD. So you can get yourself a bladder style where the actual air or the actual buoyancy is all behind you. And that tends to keep you more level in the water. So that's about trimming and keeping your body right. The other thing to think about is how your kit is on you. So, you know, your gauges and all your accessories and hoses, you don't want them sort of, your hoses out here and all your gauges dangling out here and so on, because all of that's going to cause drag. And the more trim and the tight and everything you can be, all nicely wrapped up with you, you're trying to achieve that sort of torpedo shape to go through, cut through the water very quickly and easily. With the idea being, of course, to cut down on that air consumption. So that's the 5 kit or ways to improve your kit to reduce the amount of gas you suck when you're underwater. Sounds like a horrible expression, that. So if you've got any questions or comments about what you've heard today, please pop them down below. Also, if you've learned something and you've enjoyed listening to this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you want to listen to more of these tips to learn and improve your experience scuba diving, please also subscribe to the channel. There'll be lots more of these going around. There'll be lots more of these that are coming up for you to hopefully enjoy. And it's been Russell Bowyer from ScubaDivingEarth.com. Thank you very much for listening and happy diving. Take care. Bye-bye for now.